There is a 52-year-old employee in your office right now. He has not been fired. He has not been demoted. He has not been written up. And he is already gone. His project list has shrunk every quarter for 2 years. His meetings have gotten shorter. His manager stopped asking for his opinion in budget reviews. Nobody told him why. Nobody had to. The common explanation is that he is coasting, that older workers lose their edge, slow down, stop keeping up. The truth is the opposite. He is being managed out, on purpose, by people who know that firing him outright would cost the company more than waiting for him to leave on his own. Joanna Lahey is a labor economist and professor at Texas A&M's Bush School of Government. She sent out approximately 8,000 resumes across Boston and St. Petersburg, Florida. The qualifications were identical. The only variable was age. The verdict is going to show you the system. Case file opening. This is not a story about ageism as an attitude. Attitudes do not show up on a balance sheet. This is a story about ageism as a cost reduction strategy. A set of mechanisms used by people who would never say the word old out loud. Designed to make a senior employee's exit feel like their own idea. There are 3 mechanisms. Each one is legal. Each one is deniable. And each one does more damage than the last. We start with the quietest. Mechanism 1, Role Redefinition. Survival Move 0. Understand that the attack rarely starts with a performance conversation. It starts with a job description. A reorganization is announced. Roles get consolidated. Job titles change. Responsibilities shift toward tools and platforms the company knows its senior staff have not been trained on. Not because those employees cannot learn them, but because retraining costs money and headcount budgets are tight. The new role technically exists for the same person, but the skills it now requires were chosen deliberately to favor whoever was hired most recently. This is sometimes called stealth redundancy inside human resources circles. Restructuring a position until the person in it no longer fits it, without ever removing them from it. The senior employee is never told their role was redesigned around someone else's skill set. They are simply told the company is evolving, and that they should lean into the new tools, on their own time, unpaid, while still hitting the old performance targets with half the support. There is a second layer most people miss entirely. When a role gets redefined, the company does not just choose which skills to emphasize. It chooses which skills to stop investing in. Training budgets shift toward newer hires framed as fast learners. Senior employees are told they're being protected from unnecessary retraining. It sounds like respect. It functions as exclusion. Within 18 months, the gap the company manufactured becomes the gap they point to as justification. Watch your title. If it changes without your scope shrinking on paper, but your relevance shrinking in practice. The redefinition has already started. This is mechanism 1, the quietest, and by design, the easiest for a company to claim was never about age at all. Mechanism 2, performance recalibration. Mechanism 2 is worse, because it uses your own track record as the weapon. In 2018, ProPublica journalists Peter Gosselin and Ariana Tobin published an investigation into IBM. They reviewed internal company documents. What they found was a pattern. IBM had created a point system that specifically targeted later career workers for layoffs. And here is the critical detail. These were not underperformers. Many of them had been rated as high performers. Internal communications coached managers on how to frame these decisions in age-neutral language. One internal document described the goal in plain terms: to correct seniority mix. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission later confirmed the pattern, finding that more than 85% of those IBM targeted for layoff were older workers. This is performance recalibration. The bar does not move for everyone. It moves specifically for people approaching a milestone the company would rather not pay out: a pension cliff, a stock vesting date, a tenure threshold that triggers higher severance obligations under labor law. Watch what happens in review cycles right before these milestones. Feedback that used to be vague becomes suddenly specific. A senior employee who received exceeds expectations for 6 straight years receives a meets expectations the year before a benefits cliff, with no material change in their output. That is not a coincidence. It is a paper trail being built before you know you need to defend yourself. What makes this mechanism especially effective is timing. The recalibration almost never happens the same year as the milestone. It happens 12 to 18 months earlier, far enough back that the connection is not obvious, close enough that the negative review is already sitting in the file by the time the company needs it. A manager does not even need to consciously plan it. The incentive structure does the planning for them. A tighter budget, a flagged headcount cost, a quiet nudge from finance about aging payroll liability, and the recalibration follows the incentive, without anyone ever issuing an explicit instruction. By the time the employee understands what is happening, the case has already been made against them. The verdict has seen this play out the same way, in company after company, industry after industry. Mechanism 3. Cultural exclusion. Mechanism 3 is the one that ends careers. It does not touch your job description. It does not touch your performance record. It touches whether you still feel like you belong in the room. This is cultural exclusion, and it is engineered, not accidental. The senior employee stops getting invited to gatherings where real decisions get pre-negotiated. Their name disappears from the high potential talent list quietly compiled by leadership, a list they are never shown, but one that determines who gets stretch assignments, promotions, and visibility with executives. New hiring waves bring in younger managers who, consciously or not, build their teams around people who remind them of themselves. None of this requires a single discriminatory decision. It requires hundreds of small, individually defensible ones, compounding over months, until the senior employee is technically still on the team and functionally invisible to it. And it scales. A single excluded employee might be an unlucky personality mismatch. But when an organization quietly repeats this pattern across dozens of senior employees over several years, the result is a workforce that skews younger. Not because older workers chose to leave, but because the conditions for staying were removed from underneath them, one small exclusion at a time. This is the mechanism companies rely on most, because it is the hardest to prove and the most effective at producing the outcome they want. The verdict calls this the cleanest exit a company can engineer, because the company never has to admit it engineered anything. Observable signals. These three mechanisms rarely run in isolation. They compound. And right now, across every major economy, they are compounding faster than they have in over a decade. The most recent research from the American Association of Retired Persons, published in January 2026, surveyed over 1,600 workers aged 50 and older. Nearly a quarter of them reported feeling pushed out of their jobs. 64% reported seeing or experiencing age discrimination in the workplace. And among those who had seen it, 91% said they believe such discrimination is common. That is not a fringe complaint. That is the overwhelming majority of senior professionals in real time, describing a system they are living inside. Here is what it looks like while it is happening to you. Your one-on-one meetings get shorter and more transactional. You stop being copied on threads you used to be looped into automatically. Your manager starts using the phrase culture fit in feedback that used to be about deliverables. You are asked to mentor a younger hire on a project that used to be entirely yours. Language that sounds collaborative, but functions as a handoff. And your professional development requests, once approved without question, start getting quietly deprioritized. Individually, each signal is explainable. Together, they are a pattern, and patterns, unlike incidents, are not random. Why you don't see IT? You do not see it while it is happening, because every step is small enough to rationalize. A shortened meeting is not proof of anything. Neither is a missed invite or a single soft review. The human mind is built to explain away isolated data points. It is psychologically easier to assume you are imagining a slight than to accept that your employer is making calculated, structural decisions about your value based on your age. This is precisely what makes the system effective. It is not designed to be seen. It is designed to feel from the inside, exactly like bad luck. Survival moves. The verdict does not deal in sympathy. The verdict deals in strategy. Here is what to do once you recognize the pattern. Survival move number 1. Document everything immediately outside company systems. Every shortened meeting, every quiet exclusion, every shift in feedback tone. Log the date. Log the specifics. In a personal record the company cannot access or alter. A pattern only becomes evidence once it is written down before you need it. Survival move number 2. Force your value back onto paper. Request written confirmation of project ownership. Ask for specific, measurable goals in writing rather than vague verbal feedback. Every time leadership is forced to commit a statement to a record, it becomes harder for that record to quietly shift against you later. Survival move number 3. Build external leverage before you need it. Maintain relationships and visibility outside your current company. Industry contacts, professional networks, public-facing work. An employee with options negotiates from strength. An employee fully dependent on one employer has no leverage at the exact moment leverage matters most. These moves do not guarantee you keep the role. They guarantee that if the company chooses to push you toward the door, it will be expensive, documented, and contestable, not quiet, and not free. Final verdict. 3 mechanisms. 1 outcome they never put in writing. Role redefinition manufactures your obsolescence. Performance recalibration builds the paper trail to justify it. Cultural exclusion makes you feel like leaving was your own idea. The system is not personal. That is what makes it effective, and that is what makes it survivable. A company engineering your exit through these 3 mechanisms is not making a judgment about your worth. It is making a calculation about its costs. Calculations can be countered. Judgments rarely can. Know the mechanism. Document the pattern. Negotiate from leverage, not from loyalty. The verdict is in. Silence is not safety. It is strategy. And now you know whose. Case closed. Picture the version of this where you saw the pattern 18 months earlier and walked into that final conversation holding leverage instead of surprise. But there is a deeper question we have not opened yet. What happens when the person managing you out is younger than you and knows it? That file opens next week.